Hey, this is Chris Cerrone, host of The Chris Cerrone Show, and get off your butt and start joining up the dots with David Ralph.
Welcome to Join Up Dots, amazing conversation. Join Up Dots, get a dose of motivation. Join Up Dots, don't forget the inspiration. Welcome to the place that's got the light. Join Up Dots, join Up Dots, join Up Dots, join Up Dots. Join up dots.
Hello everybody out there in internet land. How are you doing today? Hope you're good. Just before we go into today's show, which is episode 17, I had a moment of clarity this morning, and I've been getting loads of emails and sort of comments from people, and it's been amazing. It really has been amazing, the feedback that I'm getting about the show. And I suddenly thought, wouldn't it be amazing to start bringing the listeners into the show and bringing you in live? So I'm thinking about how to do this, but we might actually start doing additional programs which are listener based. So we will be discussing your emails or getting you on live and seeing the action that you've taken, hopefully being inspired by the shows to make momentum in your life and create success all around you. So I'm going to keep you informed of that, but remember, episode 17 is when you first heard that. But of course, today we have got a guest, and he's a guest waiting patiently on the other end of this Skype call. And I suppose he's a man who could possibly scratch his head a few times if asked, how did you get to where you are today? He didn't have a fixed path from an early age, that's for sure. In fact, he didn't even know that his chosen occupation was a possibility. But now he finds himself as the go-to man for direct response copywriting. And don't worry, I don't know what that is either, but we will soon. He states that he was a game of baseball, but not actually getting on the pitch, and working in a library that started the path that he followed into adulthood. And that's really a hard one to join up the dots with in any shape or form. Libraries, baseball? No, I'm going to have to ask him. But after working in the library as a teenager, he picked up 2 books that quite simply changed his life. The Well-Fed Writer and The Millionaire Next Door. Both pricked his interest to such a degree that he literally wrote the next chapters of his life there and then. By studying the subject and developing his skills, it has now taken him all the way back to the library, joining the authors of those 2 books with 3 of his own. He is the author of The You Effect, How to Transform Ego-Based Marketing into Captivating Messages That Create Customers, and that's not easy to say, and The Reluctant Writer's Guide to Creating Powerful Marketing Materials, 61 Easy Ideas to Attract Prospects and Get More Customers. And if that isn't enough, he's working on his 3rd book, Escape the Expected, The Secret Psychology of Selling to Today's Skeptical Consumers, which I think is even harder to say than the first one, which will be released in late 2014. So let's bring onto the show the man that really has the right stuff, the one and only Mr. Tom Trush. How are you today, Tom?
Doing great, David. Thanks a lot. I appreciate you having me on. It's an honor.
No, it's always an honor to have us here. And as we were talking in the pre-record, I actually contacted you a long way back in about October time. So you've been sitting there on the other end of the Skype call for a long time waiting to start. So hopefully it's a relief to finally feel free and liberated in conversation.
Oh, yes. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
So where is life for you? You are based in Arizona, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct. Yep. I live in Arizona. I've been here, it's been almost about 20 years. I originally grew up in Michigan and came out here because I had some family out here and visited them on some vacations. And I have a twin brother, and both my twin brother and I, we both said when we first came out to Arizona, and I think it was like 7th grade, we said, man, that's where we're going to go to college. And so from that point on, we kind of set that goal, and we both of us attended a community college back in Michigan. He had an academic scholarship, and I had a basketball scholarship, so we couldn't pass those up. So we spent 2 years in Michigan going to school, and then made it our goal to, like I said, to transfer out here and go to ASU, and we both went. He has since left the state and lives in Cincinnati, but I have remained. So yeah.
Whereabouts in Arizona? And we're not going to stalk you, so don't give addresses and stuff, but vaguely.
I'm in Phoenix, downtown Phoenix.
I got really drunk in Phoenix one night, I have to say.
There's a few spots to do that.
From vague memory, and I'm not going to sort of launch into dirty laundry, but I seem to remember getting really drunk in Phoenix and then ending up in a place called Yuma. Is that nearby?
Yeah, that's a couple hours away. Yeah, I mean, boy, there's not a whole lot in Yuma. Kind of interesting that you ended up out there.
Yeah, well, as I say to my mates, I was so drunk I had no sense of humour, which is the closest thing to a joke that I could create out of all that. But it wasn't bad, was it?
No, that actually that's pretty creative. I like that one.
So, when you're not being a direct response copywriter, what takes up your time, Tom?
Well, I'm a big fan of sports. And I have a couple of kids. I have a 8-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. And so my wife and I have both passed our love for sports onto those kids and to our kids. And so a lot of time is spent at their practices, at their games. I also, still like to participate in some sports myself. Probably the main thing that I do now, I love distance running. And so every day, pretty much every day. Probably, I'll sometimes take one day off a week, take a Sunday off, but pretty much every day I'm out running, and on the weekends, like to run a little bit longer and
how far
occasionally
is
throw
distance?
in a marathon.
How far is distance on a daily basis?
On a daily basis, I mean, usually only about 3-4 miles during the week, and then start getting into double-digit miles on the weekends. And in fact, working up in about it's about 3 weeks now, actually 2, going back to the Grand Canyon and doing a rim to rim to rim run hike. I mean, it's a lot of hiking, but there is some running involved, and that's we did it last year. It's not like a race or anything. It's just a couple guys and I. We go out there and just see how fast we can do it in. And last year made a slight wrong turn, so it turned out to be about 47 miles, and we did it. In one day. So it was about a little over 19 hours. So we're going back this year to see what we can do and do it a little bit quicker.
That is just madness. It is total madness. I can't understand doing those kind of things. Credit to you. I'm kind of genetically lazy. I can't remember. Well, I don't think I've ever been in a gym in my life. And I think to myself, if I need to run anywhere, just get in a car. I don't see the point.
Yeah, only if someone's chasing you do you have to run, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. So in the introduction, I was saying to you that you are the classic example of somebody that really needs to look back and join up those dots because you didn't have a fixed path from an early age. Can you remember what you wanted to be when you were young, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of kids growing up, I looked at professional athletes. And I thought, especially basketball players, I thought, man, I'm going to play in the NBA. That's what I want to do. And so that was one of my thoughts. And I mean, honestly, it didn't take too long to realize that probably wasn't going to pan out. And so then I also had an interest in, of all things, meteorology. I liked weather, and I still like weather to this day, and how weather forms. What sparked the interest is, I was at an amusement park. It was in Ohio. It's called Cedar Point. I don't know if you heard of it.
No, I haven't.
But it's a typical amusement park, lots of roller coasters and stuff, and it's on a Lake Erie, a big lake. And I think it was like 4th grade. We're waiting to go on this roller coaster called the Gemini, and we could see that some storms were coming in, and they weren't looking really good. I mean, it looked pretty dark, kind of menacing. But we had just gotten to the park, and we thought, man, we're going to get on this. We got to at least get one ride in before this rain comes. And all of a sudden, I can still picture it. I remember seeing people's heads all turn at once, and they start pointing out over the lake. And out over the lake was the formation of, since it was over the water, a water spout. But essentially, it was a tornado forming. And I thought, oh, my goodness. I remember just being hysterical and thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to get nailed by this tornado. And of course, we ended up not going on the roller coaster and then going off to dinner because things had subsided. But from that moment on, I was really interested in weather, and I thought maybe a tornado chaser or something would be pretty cool. So I guess those are the two things: either a professional athlete or chasing tornadoes.
It's ironic that you have a fascination with weather and you live in a place that has no weather. It's the same every day.
Yeah, it's. I mean, if you're a weather person here in Arizona, your job's pretty easy. I mean, you're not getting much sun, and occasionally in the summer when the monsoon season hits, you get a little bit of action with some rain and some violent thunderstorms, but that's still pretty rare.
So you liked weather and you liked basketball. So there's not really any way to mix those two up together. So so where did you sort of move through? When did direct response copywriting come into your life? And I suppose the right question, first of all, to phrase it is, what is it, first of all?
Well, direct response copywriting is, I mean, basically, to put it real simple, is I fix broken marketing materials. So when a company, the company is doing marketing, whether it's online, whether it's writing, whether it's advertising, basically they're looking to get some kind of a response. And so what I do is write marketing materials to get people to respond to them. And sometimes it's to buy something. Other times, many times, especially on more expensive items, it's just to start developing a relationship. A lot of my basis for copywriting is based on trust and establishing relationships with prospects before you ask them to buy something. So, I mean, essentially, it's looking at marketing materials and figure out ways through the text to get people to respond to them. That's what copywriting is.
So it's just warming the leads up in written ways.
Yeah, well, and attracting leads as well, and then eventually getting them to convert into sales.
So is that a sort of a niche market, or is it just something that is worldwide, but I've never really heard of it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's definitely worldwide. I mean, there are different types of copywriters. I mean, basically, it's putting, you're putting words onto paper or words onto a website. And so, I mean, there's lots of people that do it. Of course, there are little things that, I consider that make me a little bit different. Like any business, you have your things that make you unique. And so...
What makes Tom Trush unique in the direct response copywriting boring?
Well, a lot of what I do is based on education. And instead of trying to pitch prospects through my marketing, I like to educate them, give them information that they wouldn't necessarily know about that product or service, so that it doesn't come across as you just aggressively trying to get them to buy something. And a lot of times, and there's certain industries where we have this perception that anybody that's trying to sell, that we don't trust them. Car salesmen, that kind of thing. Where I like to flip that around and think, okay, what information can I give you that would make this marketing piece so valuable that you would cringe if you had to throw it away or if you lost it? So I look at a piece of paper, a blank piece of paper, almost like an artist would. A blank canvas is worth nothing until an artist starts putting paint on it or, draws on it, creates some type of image that then makes that canvas valuable. Whereas I look at a piece of paper and I think about, what can I put on this piece of paper that would make it so valuable that a prospect would not want to throw it away, that they would actually pay money to receive it? So, I mean, I think that's one of the things that makes me different, in that I'm not looking to just put words on paper for the sake of putting words on paper and just to put a message out there and get your name out there, your logo. I'm looking to put extreme value on paper so people actually look forward to getting your marketing or look forward to seeing your advertising. Because the reality is, especially when it comes to ads, people don't look forward to reading ads many times. I mean, we know what an ad looks like in a newspaper, in a magazine, whatever it is, and usually we're skipping those because we want to read the editorial. And so I want to make it, my goal is to make marketing so valuable that people want to read it, that they feel like after they get done with a piece that they receive some type of value.
I find I'm listening to you with fascination there, because I kind of think, this man must be skint, because how does he do that? That sounds such a difficult job, to make the things that come through our door on a daily basis, and on websites and stuff, that we actually want to keep them. That seems almost, an impossible job.
Yeah, but I mean, the reality is, most marketing out there is not focused on that. People aren't interested in, because there's no focus on them. Most marketing focuses on a company and not on a prospect. But when you focus on a prospect, you give them something of value, well, then your marketing takes another it takes another place in their mind. So, I mean, the reality is the best marketing often doesn't look like marketing. The best advertising often doesn't look like advertising. And so you don't want people to look at yourself or look at your promotion as just as a pitch. You want them to look at it as a way that they're getting value from it, that when they read it, they learned something new. That's why I said at the beginning that I like to focus on education. I think about when I'm dealing with a company, I ask about the prospects. What are the prospects? What's their biggest problem that they're experiencing? And then how can we use your marketing to then deliver some solutions for them? So then you're coming across as a helpful resource and not just somebody looking to pitch products and services.
Have you seen the TED Talks from a chap called Simon Sinek? Have you seen, and it's called something like The Reason Why or something like that. You can look it up. Simon Sinek, Sinek. But he talks about the Apple marketing and how they go from a different point of view. They actually go from their beliefs and why they make computers right to the very bit of, do you want to buy a computer? And it's a fascinating 15 or 16 minute presentation where he sort of says that basically Apple have created brand loyalty. And I'm not on an Apple ride here. I had an interview with a chap the other day, and I put my hand up and said, I have nothing Apple in my life at all in any shape other than a couple of them in my fridge. But he didn't like the fact that Apple have created a kind of cult, he said, a closed environment. They provide quality products, but they have incredible brand loyalty. Now, Simon Sinek, on the other side, he queries the fact that they have created that brand loyalty because they do everything in a reverse order to everything that everybody else does. Have you seen that at all?
Yes, I have. Yep, I know what talk you're talking about. Yeah.
Is that true? Is that the way that it should be done?
I mean, I think so. And if anything, especially when it comes to marketing and promotion, I think you have to look at what everybody else is doing and then take the contrarian approach. Do the exact opposite. I mean, marketing is all about attracting attention. And if you're doing what everybody else is, then you just drown in a sea of sameness. I mean, it's more like, you're doing something, but then everybody else is doing the same thing. They're saying the same things. They have the same messages. But when you do something different, that's what's going to attract attention. So, I think Apple is always a company that people look to for inspiration in the marketing world because they have such a loyal following. And so people try to dissect that and see what they're doing. And obviously they're doing a great job. I mean, the great thing about them is their customers are advocates for that company. And I mean, it's a beautiful place to be in when your customers or your clients are promoting your products and services for you. I mean, it's a very envious position to be in.
I hope that Join Up Dots will get that way. Wouldn't that be good if people are saying,
oh, yes.
Yeah, have you heard of this? Have you heard this? Let's get on. Let's go back to that Tom Trush episode. God, he's a good-looking guy. You can just look at the screen while you're listening to it. You'll see that there's very few images of myself on the website. I put all the guests at forefront because you do have the vision that I don't actually have.
Well.
Don't be humble. Big yourself up, Tom. You're a good-looking chap.
I tend to fall on the humble, introverted side, so...
I'll let that go. So your fixed path, okay, so we've talked about what direct response copywriting is, but when we first contacted each other, you actually gave me a nice little story about a game of baseball that actually you can look back and it was the moment that kind of flipped your life on its head, really.
Yes.
How did that work? Because I can't quite grasp that, so I'm all ears to just throw the mic over to you and let's listen to this game of baseball. How was that so fundamental to you creating a career that you've got now?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll just be real honest with you right from the start here. This is a story that I've shared with my kids, and that's about it. but I think I look back and it's been so critical in my life because of the lessons that I learned. And I hate, cliche sounding things. And I think this kind of could go to that cliche that all things happen for a reason. But okay, this was back in high school, and as I've mentioned before, I love sports, very much into sports, especially growing up. And one of those sports was baseball. And I did pretty well, did little league, and I played, uh, I had some success, some all-star games, that kind of stuff. And so I thought I was pretty good. But then high school came around, and of course, with high school comes trying out for teams. So, like in Little League, you're kind of just placed on a team. There's no tryouts. But in high school, you have to try out. And I was pretty confident about making the team. But what happened, we started having these tryouts and having practices. And I remember, since it was Michigan, we started the practices in the gym because it's still too cold and there's snow and there's mud on the ground. So we weren't playing outside. And it became quite clear during these tryouts that I was not doing well at all. I mean, I was doing stuff that I couldn't believe I was doing. I mean, I wasn't catching the ball, I wasn't hitting the ball, I was doing nothing that I had done before. And I can remember to this day, it was like 3 consecutive days of tryouts, and I can remember thinking to myself, "What is going on? I know I can do this, and I'm just not doing anything that I'm capable of. I'm not showing any of my abilities." And it's like I had no ability to show what I could do. It's like everything had left me, and I absolutely bombed those tryouts. And as a result, I didn't make the team. And from there, of course, I didn't even try out again because I remember, I mean, I was absolutely crushed. I grew up, being a pretty good baseball player. And then, it was embarrassing for me. Everyone knew, I mean, I was kind of known as, that I played baseball. So I think people expected, okay, be on the high school team. But I wasn't because I did not make the team. I bombed those tryouts. But then right afterwards, it was like after I didn't make the team, I was down. I mean, back then, it was like one of the biggest things in my life. I couldn't believe it. Depressed, but it was like 2 days later, I'm sitting on the steps in the school with a friend, and the track coach comes up to me, and he says, "Hey, I understand you didn't make the team, but let me tell you, I could really use you out on the track team." Now, up to that point, I had never even thought about track, but because everything was focused on baseball. Baseball I was going to be on the baseball team. It was a given. But then I decided, well, yeah, okay, well, I'll go out for track. And like I said here at the beginning, now to this day, I still run. I run a lot. Track was one of those things. I then wanted track and had some success in track to where like sophomore year, I was like second in the conference in the high jump. And, I did hurdles and I had a great time. I loved track. And as it worked out, my twin brother, he was on the baseball team. And oftentimes when we did track meets, the away meets were often where baseball was having their away games as well. So, it was still, I got to see some of the baseball, but still participated in track. And I look back, why this story is so powerful to me is, like I said, I remember thinking, what is going on? Why am I not showing what I can do? And this is absolutely crushing to me that I can't show my abilities and show people what I actually can get done. But then going into track was the positive that came out of it. And it's still something that I do today. And there's been a couple of different instances in my life where this same story has played out twice that I can think of, that I've had that same thought. What is going on at this moment to make it so that I'm not showing my true ability? There's something bigger, there's something else that's happening to me right now. And at the time, it seems like absolute disaster. Nothing could be worse, but then something ends up coming out of it as a result that's positive and that pushes me into a new direction in life. And it's hard to explain, but like I said, it's happened now. It started with the baseball situation. It's happened now 3 times where I've been in situations where in my mind, the same thought has gone through. What is going on in this situation? I know I could do better. Why aren't my abilities coming out at this time? There's got to be a reason. So,
do you have inbuilt faith that things are going to turn out right for you now because of those?
I do. However, in these instances when these situations have come up, I haven't. It seems like the absolute worst thing that can happen. You can't even look beyond those days because you're like, what is going to go on from here? What can I do from here? You don't see it. And I guess, having, like I said, having happened it 3 times now to me in different situations, I should start thinking, having some faith. But for me, it's just that I can't get over that thought of, what the hell is happening? Why is this happening to me right now? I've prepared. I can do better. Why aren't my abilities coming out at this moment?
Do you think subconsciously you're holding yourself back for some reason? Do you think there's, could it be that you want something so badly that you're actually sabotaging yourself somehow?
That's a definite possibility. I think for me, I touched on, I am pretty introverted, and in some cases, if again, being very, very honest, there are times where I feel prepared for stuff, ready to achieve something, but then I start having thoughts like, is this right for me? Do I really deserve this? That kind of stuff. And I think that's very typical with people, especially in a business setting as well. So you kind of sometimes hold yourself back because you don't know if you're quite ready or you quite deserve what you should be getting.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Does that make sense?
No, it makes total sense. I've had the same conversations in numerous episodes, both from my own point of view and to the guest as well. And most of the people I've interviewed have come from an area of transition and struggle where they've been working 80, 90, 100 hours a week for a pittance and knowing that they can do something so much better but not really knowing their path. And when they do actually get to that point where they are seeing great success, obviously they're getting the money that comes in that sort of balances up to the success. And a lot of them kind of think, hang on, I shouldn't be earning this much money because I'm not working as hard as I was previously. This is wrong. And there's a kind of guilt, there's an inner conflict that works. And certainly from my side of the fence now, I've worked up in the city of London. I've done incredibly long hours and a long journey home and everything, and I haven't seen my kids. Now, basically, I'm having a chat on a daily basis. Am I providing value to the world? I really hope so. But should I, earn more or earn less than other people? And I think that's the problem that I'm going to have if this takes off as I'd like it to take off and it becomes something, worthwhile. Fingers crossed, money's going to come towards me, but I'm still going to have that battle that actually I shouldn't be getting this. So I think it's absolutely accurate what you're saying, and you're not alone.
Yeah, it's amazing that those same thoughts play out in so many people's minds. You may not see it on the outside, but there's a lot of people having those same things going through their mind, every day in situations that from the outside you watch them, you think, hey man, it's a given. I can see why that person's succeeding, but they're having that same type of thought. It's one of those things that I think a lot of people, especially in a business situation, they don't realize goes on, in so many people's minds. And it doesn't
matter how high you get either. You've still got those doubts, those insecurities. I'm sure that if I can ever get Richard Branson, for example, on here, I bet he sort of wakes up in certain moments and thinks, my God, I don't really know what to do here. Everyone's looking towards me to know, should I hold my hands up and confess? It's that inner conflict all the time. It's that tension that forces you on, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's very true.
So where is the tension in your life now, away from what we were just talking about? Because would you say, Tom, that you are now successful?
I would say successful, but still have a desire to do an incredible amount more. I don't feel satisfied. It's satisfied in success. I don't put those in the same sentence. I'm successful in that. Yes, I have a business that I love, that I enjoy doing. I can't really imagine doing anything else because I look forward to it every day. But success is defined different ways, And I still have a ton that I need to prove to myself.
Does anyone hold you back? Does your wife sort of say to you, because one of the battles with being an entrepreneur is the job is a passion. It's a driving force in your life. Does your wife ever say to yourself, Tom, reflect on what you've achieved. You don't have to be so hard on yourself.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she's a great encourager. It's very interesting between her and I in that she is a teacher. And the mentality of a teacher and the mentality of an entrepreneur, people in business, I mean, they're like complete opposites. And so it's nice to have her around to, kind of balance out things. I mean, I get ideas, like any entrepreneur, I get ideas that I just want to, jump at it. And my idea of risk is pretty low in comparison to, her, for example. I'll jump into things because I don't necessarily see the risk, but somebody on the outside who's not in that entrepreneurial world, they see it as super risky, and why are you doing that? That kind of stuff. So it's great to have her because she causes me to look at situations differently and from another perspective.
So when it comes to risk, obviously you must have calculated risk. You can't just go boom and just jump at the first thing. So why do you not see risk like other people? Has that always been the case when you was a small child? Would you be the person, doing crazy things?
No, I mean, I'm not typically the one to take big risks. In business, I see it a little bit differently in that, especially in marketing situations, I'm the one that's in control. And that's what I have learned since I started. I started my business back in 2001. Part-time, and then went full-time in 2004. One of the big lessons that I have learned is, I'm happy to take on risk when I'm in control. If my gut tells me that I'm not in control and somebody else is in control, in the past, I have taken action that allowed other people to take control and put me at greater risk. So if I'm in control, I'm happy to take on more risk. And in fact, I think that's part of the fun of being an entrepreneur is doing those things that people, that many people would look at and think, man, that's crazy. But we look at it as, no, it's just part of being an entrepreneur. It's part of being business. Because, another big lesson that I've learned over the years is that people aren't watching you for criticism. They're watching you for inspiration. And we get so worried about what other people think, but they're not really looking to criticize. I mean, the people are watching you because, I don't know if jealous is the right word, but, when you have your own business, when you're an entrepreneur, a lot of people envy that position because they see it, they think it's a lot of freedom and, you can work whenever you want, that kind of stuff. So they're not necessarily looking to criticize. They're inspired by what you're doing because in some cases, it's what they want to do as well. They want to have a lot of people want to have their own business. That's a typical dream. They want to be able to do something that they love. And so, I feel very blessed to be able to do something that I love every day and do it, in a way that I want to do it. So.
The thing about being an entrepreneur, and I wrote this down as you was talking, is there's a hell of a lot of work to get to the point when people will then go, I wish I had that too. And that's the thing, isn't it? It ties up again with the join up dot scenario. They don't see the 3 years of you working part-time. So you were doing your job and coming in the evening, I imagine, and working till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, getting up and doing your day job. And people, they only see the highlights. They don't see the steps that lead towards it, to the director's cut, I suppose.
Boy, I mean, you're exactly right. In fact, you use some words that I use all the time. Like when I'm working with businesses on their marketing, what I find is that a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, executives, they look at another company and they look at their marketing and they think, man, I want to do that. But you use the word highlights, and that's the exact same word that I use is, you're watching somebody else or some other company achieve something. All you're seeing are the highlights. It's like, you're seeing the 1 out of 20 the one success out of 20 failures. And so you can't compare yourself with somebody else when all you're doing is seeing their highlights and not their failures.
Do you think that's what?
I mean, you're right on with that, David.
Yeah, but do you think that's what stops people? You know, what I want to get over with these shows, the avatar of the show, is the people that are kind of lost. They've gone through college, they're in their first job, they don't like that, so they get a new job thinking it's going to be the great thing, and they still don't like it, but they haven't really found their path. And I just want them to get some stories where people will say, yes, I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do, but I stumbled around. I'm going to play the Steve Jobs speech in a moment on that because it links into it quite well. But I stumbled around. I made some mistakes. I drank too many beers. Then I had a conversation with somebody. Then something else happened. I slept with a few people, and then bang, something just triggered. And it's that kind of experiencing life that actually creates that path. And the missing generation, I feel, because I've been in it for years and years and years in corporate land, are the ones kind of trapped in contentment zone when it's not too bad to do anything, but it's not too bad to, you know, really push against anything and try anything on your own. You know, you just live for the pay packet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think, yeah, you got to have the confidence that, you know, if you don't know what you're going to do, what the future holds, you just got to be ready for the inspiration to come. I mean, you touched on it earlier. You know, I got my inspiration from, and what I'm doing now, you know, from a couple of books that I just kind of stumbled on because I worked at a library. You know, I in college, I had this job at the library, and so I got to see books all the time. And, you know, the newest books, you know, I had time to kind of find some interest in. Even back then, you know, I mentioned meteorology. I also liked photography, so I look at photography books. But you know, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do until, you know, I stumbled on those two books, and I was like, "Yeah, this is it. This is the one." But I consider that very late in life. I mean, I was still in college, going to college for, you know, a degree in journalism. So I thought, well, maybe, you know, I kind of like to write, and, you know, maybe you know, writing for a newspaper and covering sports would be great, but I still wasn't real confident that that was the career.
And how old were you then, Tom?
That was, let's see, like, you know, 1920. Yeah, well, actually, no, a little bit later. Yeah, like more like 21. Yeah, 21, 22, right around there.
Which is still quite young because I'm 43, and I can honestly say the last 5 weeks has been the most fulfilling of my career. I've had highlights in my career. I've had enjoyable periods, but I feel like I've come home. I feel like this is what I should be doing. And I wasn't ready. Yeah. It's not something that I could have said I should have been doing this 10 years ago because I just wasn't ready for it. It wasn't me at that point. But now I just can't imagine at the moment wanting to do anything else.
That's a beautiful position to be in, man, because then, I mean, you wake up inspired every day. And I imagine for you, too, I mean, your creativity is probably at the highest it's ever been right now. You probably have, like, new ideas coming to you as you're sleeping, and you wake up all excited, ready to implement.
Yeah, it's like somebody said to me the other day, it's like when you know your path and you're on the right track, you've been doused in rocket fuel. And you've got energy that you didn't know that you could possibly have. And even when you're coming home and it's late at night and you should be going to bed, you think, no, I just log on and I'll just do a couple of hours or whatever, you know, and you can't get enough of it, you know. And I think that's what everybody needs to have out there. And I suppose, in a way, I think everybody needs to remember the great words of George Michael when he said, you know, you got to have faith. And I think that kind of works, really. A simple faith that things are going to get better in the long run will help you push through the dark times, the tired times, the times when you just think, I can't be bothered. And then ultimately you will reap those rewards. You've got to reap those rewards. So I'm just going to stop rambling now. I'm going to play the Steve Jobs speech. I mean, I just want to see how relevant his words are to your life. I think they're spot on, but hey, what do I know? So this is Steve Jobs.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college. But it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
Does it, Tom? Does it make all the difference?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, him saying that, I mean, gosh, it's one of those things where you kind of look back. That's something that I would love to hear, back in, college days where, I didn't really have a lot of direction. It's scary, too, when you don't know, what you want to be when you grow up. You just kind of have to have some faith and realize that, everything's happening and you'll eventually find the way. It just might not be at the time frame that you want it to be. So, yeah, I mean, that definitely...
It's
that
simple,
definitely applies
isn't it?
to my life.
Yeah, it's simple, it's powerful, and I believe it applies to everyone's life. It really does.
Oh, yes, I agree.
So getting sort of back into your world now, so now you're a published author. Did you have some kind of mental barriers to break down in that regard as well? Being a copywriter, and I might be sounding dismissive, but I imagine that you don't write to that breadth and that length that is required for a book. When somebody came along to you, or maybe they didn't, maybe you said, I want to write a book, and you went off to a publisher. But when that first idea came along, did you have those gremlins in your head? Did you have that internal dialogue going, I'm who am I? I'm Tom Trush. I'm not Shakespeare. I'm not Stephen King. Should I be writing these kind of books? Or was it a liberating exercise to do?
Oh, no doubt I had those thoughts. I thought, in my books, they've come about because it's not something where I just sit down and I just crank out a whole bunch of words to create a book. It's a collection of things that I've written over time. I try to break it down and, I write one piece, essentially one article that I share with my audience every week. And so it then comes to a point to where I compile those articles and repurpose to create, make some changes. But, a lot of text is already there for a book. I just have to make some adjustments. But I can remember before publishing my first book, looking on Amazon and thinking, wow, imagine one day, how cool would that be to be an author? That must be so much hard work. But I don't know if I can do that. I don't know everything that's involved. I have no idea how to publish a book. I knew I wanted to, if you went to a traditional publisher, I knew there would be a lot of challenges. I had no idea to get started with that. So I figured, well, I better self-publish. But man, I don't know how to self-publish. How am I going to do this thing? And so just like writing the book, it was baby steps where, I just did a little bit here, a little bit there, and it took a while. And especially with the second book, it took longer than I wanted it to take. Because, each time you take this little step, you learn something, and then you have to go back and adjust. I think that's the key. With a big project like a book, you just have to take these little baby steps. We look at books as this huge accomplishment, and, of course, it would be incredibly difficult to sit down and say, hey, I'm going to write a book, and then you give yourself a deadline. And I know some people do it. I'm going to write a book, and then they say in the next 30 days, and they sit down. That's all they do is focus on that book. That's pretty intimidating to me, but if anything that you want to do, like publishing a book, I think it's just key to break it down to these little tiny chunks so that you can feel you can have ownership of some type of success each time that you do one little step, because then that'll keep you going. But when you fail, you make these steps too big and you fail a couple times in a row, well, then your desire to finish that project just goes out the door.
I remember hearing an interview with Stephen King many years ago, and if anybody sort of knows the work of Stephen King, well, it's hard not to know because he's been around forever and a day. His first book, Carrie, he wrote it, and he was so racked with those same thoughts, those same doubts, that he threw it in the bin. And it was actually his wife who actually got it out, started reading it, and said, no, this is good, you need to carry this on. But he said... somebody said to him, how do you become a novelist? And he said, you write one page a day for 365 days, you've got a book. And it was as simple as that. It may not be a brilliant book, it may not be, earth-shattering, but you write enough words, put them all together, you've got a book.
Yeah. It just takes a little bit of discipline. But of course, there's good, you have those thoughts in your mind, well, who's going to read this book? Is people really not going to like this book? What if somebody criticizes it? You always have those thoughts in the back of your mind, and you just got to understand those people are out there. You're not going to please everyone. But there are going to be people who are going to latch onto your message because it's perfect for that person, and they are going to love the stuff that you're putting out there. You just got to keep reminding yourself of that, because if you start focusing on the critics, man, you're going to have your book's never going to get published.
Do you have critics? Are there Tom Trush haters? I can't believe there are, but are there people that get on Amazon and do nasty reviews and stuff?
There's no nasty reviews on Amazon right now, but I have received emails. In fact, with my second book, I created what I called the 11 laws of U-Effect marketing. One of those laws, law number 11, is embrace your critics. They're a sure sign you're doing something right. And I had one in particular that I wrote about, and I titled the article in the chapter in the book, How to Deal with a Pain in the Ads. And basically it was some ads that I had critiqued, and I had a guy just absolutely drill me and send me this email that was just awful, and he then posted on my website, and it was fine. I don't care. I mean, the critics are fine. Like for him, I pretty much switched things around and said, he was criticizing my suggestions, and I said, okay, well, what do you got? Show me what you're doing that's going to be that would make this ad better. And he was silent pretty fast. He had nothing. But I think the critics are great. Excuse me. And like I said, it's a sure sign you're doing something right, because you're not going to please everyone. And especially when it comes to business and making decisions that involve money, we base a lot of our decisions are based on emotions, not logic. And so when you get people that are upset with you, you've tapped into their emotions. So you know that you've done something right. And, of course, at the same time you have those critics, you're going to have those people that are going to be praising you as well, that, your message speaks directly to them. They may not be as loud, and they may not be as memorable, but they're out there, and you just got to feel confident and know that they're out there.
Does that come with experience? Because, I know one of the things that stops so many people starting is that fear. It's those voices, as we keep on talking about. And so the fact that you're saying you get the critics, that means you're onto something, you're doing the things the right way, kind of seems backwards somehow, doesn't it? You kind of think if you're doing everything, people are going to love you, and they're just going to say, that Tom Trush, I love all his work. But you're just saying because you've evoked an emotion into somebody, then you're making an impact. Is that what you're saying on that?
Yeah. The only difference is that, criticism and anger, I mean, that's much louder. It's much more, I mean, it attracts more attention. And when people are happy or they're inspired by what you do, that doesn't necessarily get as much attention as the critics. I mean, just look at the media today. I mean, it goes back to, in the journalism days, if it bleeds, it leads. So anything that's negative, that's what gets the attention. It's the good stuff that doesn't necessarily, it doesn't spread as well. I mean, it's that criticism that, I don't know, people really, they key off that criticism. They like to, I don't know, some people, it just makes them feel good to criticize.
It's sad though, isn't it? That you do do really good work. It's like if you go into a store, and they give you terrible service. And I was a trainer for years and years and years, and I used to do a course on customer service and understanding building rapport and stuff. And one of the things that we used to talk about was if you went into a store and they gave you, bad service, you'd come out and you would tell people. And you would go, do you know what happened at lunchtime? And then the next person, and you'd probably live off that story for about 3 or 4 weeks or more. You go into a store and you got brilliant service, you wouldn't tell anyone. You would just kind of come out and just keep it to yourself, even though that person has gone overboard to give you the service that you weren't even expecting. It over-delivered. And it's really sad, isn't it, that we don't share, and we don't. And it's not an American thing. If you Americans come over here, wow, you'd know bad service. You really would. Because us English, we go over there and it's all have a nice day and how are you, sir, and all that kind of stuff. I find that amazing because we don't get any of that over here.
Yeah, I mean, well, in good service is fairly common. I mean, it's kind of dangerous saying that. Great service is something that's pretty exceptional. And then bad service, I would argue it's less common than excellent service. So when it happens, it's just one of those things. It touches a nerve, so you just feel like you got to talk about it. You got to tell somebody because you want them to share in your, share in that negative emotion.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, does it? It doesn't really make sense. Wouldn't it be a nicer world if we were all singing when we walk down the street and hugging each? No, that'd be a bit strange. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to walk into a pub of men and all be hugged and have them singing choir songs to you. No, that's not a good idea. That takes me back to the night in Newmo, I'm sure.
That would be odd, yes.
Yes. So, at the end of the show, what I like to do is just to bring it full circle is do something called the Sermon on the Mic. And this is when I hand over the presenting duties to yourself. And like a time traveller, you whiz back and you have a one-on-one with your younger self. And you can choose any age of younger Tom Trush you want. But it's your chance to actually give them some insights and words of wisdom of how your life has panned out to help ease their way. So I'm going to play the music, and when it fades out, Mr. Tom Trush, this is a Sermon on the Mic.
Here we go with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic.
All right. Well, it's tough to follow that intro there, but I'll go back to I guess early in my business days, I was always very concerned with what people thought of me. And I mentioned it before, my own quote that I kind of come up with is that people are watching you for inspiration, not criticism. I was always very worried about what I would do and what people would think about me. And early on in business, I thought, well, people are looking at me, so I've got to project this appearance that I'm bigger than what I really am. And so, I've got a big business and I've got a team behind me, all that kind of stuff, that I needed to prove that I was capable of, being a business like an Apple. We talked about Apple earlier, or a recognizable business, and then people would have confidence in me. What I didn't realize is that people do business with people. They want to work directly with you. They're not working with a big name. And so that was something that really halted me in my early days of business, is thinking that I had to portray an image that was bigger than what I actually am. The second thing, it comes back to a quote that I love from Thomas Jefferson. And he said, if you want something you've never had, you must do something you've never done. It seems so simple, but taking that advice has made a big difference in the achievements that I've had, because there's often times where I want to achieve something, I want to do something, and then when I step back and look, because I haven't achieved that goal or that objective, I realize I've just been doing the same stuff over and over again. So I have to get out of my comfort zone. I have to think of something that's different, some different course of action that's going to get me to that result. And again, I mean, that quote is just, it's so basic, but it has so much power behind it, because we get caught in these traps. We want something, but we're only willing to do something that makes us comfortable. We got to get out of that comfort zone, and we got to start thinking of ways to get an objective that's a little bit different than what we've already been doing before. In business, sometimes that's looking at another industry. Maybe looking at somebody who's a mentor in a business that's not even related to yours. But if you're not achieving some kind of goal or objective that you want, sit back, look at what you're doing, and then figure out, the different thing that you have to do to get there, or at least you have to try. So those are the two big things. If you want something you've never had, you must be willing to do something you've never done. And remember that people are watching you for inspiration, not criticism.
Thomas Jefferson, what a man, eh? So look for that one on Google and print it up, because it's fundamental, isn't it? If you want something you've never had, do things that you've never done before, or whatever it was. But no, I think that's brilliant. I will remember that myself. Tom Trush, it's been an absolute delight having you on Join Up Dots today. You've been open and generous, and of course extremely talkative, which makes it extremely easy from my side of the fence. So I'd like to thank you for that. As I say to all the guests, in the future, if you've got new successes and new stories that you want to share, come back, because the door's never closed. And I believe that our histories carry on going forwards, and the best way of creating our futures is actually looking back and joining up those dots. Tom Trush, thank you so much.
David, thank you very much. I had a great time.
That's the end of Join Up Dots. You've heard the conversation. Now it's time for you to start taking massive action. Create your future, create your life. It's the only life you've got. And we'll be back again real soon. Join Up Dots, Join Up Dots, Join Up Dots, Join Up Dots. Join Up